Being discarded by an avoidant is freaking brutal. But what can be even more brutal than the discard itself is the timing of the discard. Avoidants are notorious for discarding partners during time of crisis. When there is some sort of major life event that can be very stressful, when you need them the most, they are walking out the door. It could be a health crisis. It could be a financial stress. It could be losing your job, losing a family member. Something serious that happens in your life, or perhaps theirs, that causes stress, and you need the comfort and the support and the love from your partner more than ever. But not only are they not giving it to you, not only are they pulling back, they're exiting altogether and showing you little to no empathy and little to no communication while they're walking out the door. And if you do get communication from them, they're trying to rationalize and intellectualize and turn it into logic and reason why they have to go. So why do they do this? If you're dealing with a dismissive avoidant or a fearful avoidant that leans heavily dismissive, the expectations of having to be there for you, both emotionally and physically during time of crisis, is very triggering to them. Plus, being in a relationship itself is a source of stress for this person. But let's get into the expectations part of it first. Expectations, needs are very triggering to a dismissive avoidant. That's because this is a person that grew up in a household where they received consistent childhood emotional neglect. They weren't given that love and nurturing in the way that they needed. But in addition to that neglect and not being able to express their own feelings, they often had very demanding parents that had very high expectations on them, driving them to success. So what this did is it created this feeling like they're not good enough, they're defective, and they can't meet expectations. So when there's even the slightest expectation of them in a relationship, it becomes very triggering, it triggers their attachment wounds, and they get this feeling that they're ultimately going to disappoint their partner's going to figure out that they're defective, and they're going to get rejected. So the way they've learned to protect themselves is to avoid the situation. They were never shown how to process emotions, they were never shown how to work through this stuff, so they do what they've learned to do from childhood, run from it. So now you need them, you need their emotional support, you need their empathy, you need their love, you need their care. And that is triggering them, so they shut down and exit to avoid not meeting your expectations. They become singularly self-focused in this aspect. And that's because from a young age, they've learned the only person that will ever look out for them is themselves. So they essentially grow up with the inability to consider the needs and feelings of other people outside of themselves, especially when they're triggered. So they really are only thinking of themselves and soothing themselves and soothing their own anxiety. And that's why they're not there for you. That's why they're not showing empathy for you, because they're simply not considering you, even though you are in a world of pain. Not only are you having to deal with this crisis, you're now having to deal with the sudden loss of your partner, them walking out the door, really betraying your heart when you needed them most. So your world is just turned upside down. And now they're off distracting themselves, avoiding dealing with the emotions, and often appearing to be living their best life while you are licking your wounds and trying to pick up the pieces of your life and deal with whatever crisis that you have to deal with. Now, being in a relationship is a source of stress for avoidance. It gives them a baseline of stress. That's because there's pressure in the relationship. Pressure to meet expectations, pressure to give something of themselves, pressure to be vulnerable, to be emotionally available, to meet their partner's needs. Now, when there isn't any other major life stressors, the validation, the attention, and the benefits that they get from the relationship can outweigh that stress. But when other life stressors happen, it compounds on top of that pre-existing stress that they're already experiencing just by being in the relationship. Now, because they were never shown how to process emotions and deal with stress, they get overwhelmed very easy, and their capacity to deal with life issues is very low. So now the life stressor happened, the crisis happened, It added on top of that stress that they're having just by being in the relationship with you. So they look to relieve stress for themselves. Well, they can't cut out other stressors, like they can't cut out work, they can't cut out finances, they can't cut out things like that. So the most disposable item in their life becomes a relationship. So they cut out the relationship with you to give themselves an immediate stress relief. And that's exactly what happens. When they cut you out, they breathe a sigh of relief because they're no longer having to deal with the stress of trying to show up for you. And being out of the relationship altogether gives them a stress relief. Even though you're in crisis, you are hurting, you are in pain, they've just shattered your heart, they're feeling absolute relief. Well, this is a person that has very deep attachment wounds, a person that is emotionally unavailable. Now keep in mind the two major components of emotional availability. One, the ability and the willingness to form a deep bond, a deep love. Well, that's clearly not there if you're walking out on your partner when they need you most. And the ability and the willingness to empathize with your partner, to share their emotions, to have the thought process of, how do I show up for my person? How do my actions impact them? Well, there's no empathy in that either. You're dealing with a person that is solely focused on themselves. Don't sell yourself short. You never would have done that to them. You never would have done that to anybody. So you certainly didn't deserve it happening to you. It's not a reflection of you. It's not a reflection of your worth. It's a reflection of them, their attachment wounds, but yes, also their character. Because even despite these attachment wounds, they know that walking out on their partner during a time of a crisis is wrong. They know that. And we can make excuses and say that they're wounded people, which they are. But when they do that, they know. They absolutely know. They're just choosing to focus on themselves, rationalize what they're doing, and distract themselves from any accountability. And that's on them. It's not on you.